You are filling out expense reports when the call comes in. It's a Tuesday, which matters because Tuesdays are the days you let yourself believe the job is manageable. You have a cup of coffee going cold on your desk at the Phoenix field office, a stack of interdiction reports from the Nogales crossing, and exactly 14 minutes before your supervisor expects you in a briefing about a mid-level Sinaloa courier you've been building a case against for 11 months. You are good at this job. You have been good at this job for 9 years. You cleared more seizures in your first 3 years than most agents clear in 10, and you carry that fact the way some people carry faith, quietly but always there when you need it. The call is from your partner, Ruiz. He doesn't say hello. He says the CI is dead and the buy is still happening in 4 hours, and you are the only one who can walk in there and not get everyone killed. You already know what he's going to ask before he asks it. You've known for 6 months that this scenario was eventually coming, the way you know a storm is building by the pressure in the air long before the clouds arrive. You tell him you'll be there. You hang up and sit with the cold coffee for a moment. Then you stand, put on your jacket, and walk out of the building into the Arizona heat. The operation is a controlled buy at a warehouse off I-10. The CI, a mid-level dealer named Cortez, who had been feeding your team quality intelligence for 2 years, was found in a drainage canal that morning with 2 rounds in the back of his skull. The seller, a man your team knows only as El Contador, has no photograph on file, no confirmed identity, no prints in any system you can access. What you have is a time, an address, and a cover legend that Cortez spent weeks building for himself. Cortez is gone. But the seller doesn't know that yet. Ruiz looks at you across the hood of the surveillance van and says the cover legend transfers. You speak the right Spanish, you know the right names. You could walk in as the buyer and walk out with enough product and documentation to collapse 3 distribution cells at once. You could end what 11 months of work built toward. You know it's outside protocol. You know an undercover operation of this kind requires weeks of preparation, psychological screening, a support team, a handler, a cover backstory that can survive scrutiny. You have 4 hours and a dead CI's reputation. You know all of this. You say yes anyway, because 9 years have taught you that the window for operations like this does not stay open, and because somewhere in the machinery of your judgment there is a component that was always drawn to the edge of things. The buy goes clean. You walk out with 2 kilos of fentanyl-laced product and a phone number that cracks 3 additional networks within the month. Your supervisor calls it the best single operation the Phoenix office has run in 5 years. Ruiz buys the drinks. You accept the praise with the particular flatness of someone who knows the real cost hasn't arrived yet. The cost arrives 6 weeks later, in the form of a pharmacological fact you already knew in the abstract, but had not yet encountered in your own body. El Contador, as a gesture of good faith before the exchange, had offered you a line of his product. To refuse would have been to die in that warehouse. You understood this with complete clarity at the time. You accepted with the calm of someone buying time, telling yourself that a single exposure, a single strategic, survival-driven exposure, would leave no lasting mark. You were wrong about this. You were wrong in the way that people who know better are sometimes more catastrophically wrong than people who don't, because knowledge creates the illusion of immunity. The craving, when it comes, does not announce itself dramatically. It arrives as a slight flatness in the color of ordinary days. The expense reports seem thinner, the briefings run longer, the coffee stops tasting like anything. You recognize what is happening with the cold, professional precision of someone who has spent 9 years studying the neuropharmacology of addiction in order to prosecute it, and the recognition does nothing to stop it. This is the part they never fully explain in the training modules, that understanding a trap and being free of it are entirely different categories of experience. You do not go back to the street. You are not that far gone, not yet. What you do is more surgical and therefore more sustainable, which means more dangerous. You have access. 9 years of DEA work means you know exactly which evidence lockers have inconsistent inventory protocols. You know which seized shipments are bound for destruction rather than trial. You know the gaps in the chain of custody documentation because you helped design some of those protocols yourself. You take small amounts, carefully, infrequently enough at first that you can still describe it to yourself as management rather than dependency.
You are managing the operational residue of an extraordinary circumstance. You are a professional maintaining function under unusual stress. You believe this the way people believe things they need to believe in order to keep moving. Your case closure rate does not drop. This is the thing that allows everything else to continue. You are still good at the job. You are, if anything, more aggressive in the field, more willing to take the positions that other agents hedge away from, because there is a part of you that has quietly stopped calculating your own risk the way it used to. This is not noticed as a problem. It is noted as an asset. You were assigned to a joint task force targeting a new synthetic distribution network operating out of Tucson. You were given a team, you were given resources, you were given the kind of institutional trust that is very difficult to lose quickly once you have spent 9 years accumulating it. The task force work is real, the arrests are real, the seizures are real. You are simultaneously dismantling a drug network and dependent on a version of its product, and you carry this contradiction the way you carry your badge, automatically, without letting yourself feel the full weight of it. The skill that makes you effective in the field, the ability to hold a false identity with complete psychological commitment, turns out to be the same skill that allows you to hold a false identity within your own life. You become very good at being two people. You are the agent that gets results, the mentor's junior staff that gives the right answers in the right rooms, and you are the person who 3 or 4 times a week, in the privacy of a schedule you alone control, takes something that doesn't belong to you and uses it to stay level.
The first near miss happens during a surveillance rotation. You are 9 hours into a static watch position when the symptoms arrive. Not euphoria, not escape, but the pharmacological debt that comes due when the interval runs too long. Your hands develop a tremor that you hide by gripping the binoculars differently. Your focus narrows in ways that feel like concentration, but are the edges of withdrawal. The junior agent with you notices nothing, or notices nothing she names aloud. You rotate out early, citing a migraine. In your car, you sit for 20 minutes before you are able to drive. You tell yourself this is the line. You believe it the same way you believed the first time was the line, and the time before that. You begin to plan differently. Not the drug use, that planning has long since become automatic, but the management of it. You schedule your rotations to create windows. You cultivate a reputation for early arrivals and late departures that gives you unwitnessed time in the office. You become an expert in the specific geography of your own institutional blind spots, which is deeply ironic because mapping institutional blind spots is literally your professional expertise. The skills are the same skills. You are using the investigative mind that the DEA spent 9 years sharpening, and you are pointing it at yourself. The case against the Tucson network breaks open in the 18th month. You arrest 17 people in a single coordinated operation. It is the largest synthetic seizure in the Phoenix office's history. There are photographs. There are commendations. Your supervisor shakes your hand and uses the word exceptional, and you stand in the fluorescent light of a conference room, receiving genuine praise for real work you did, and the wrongness of the moment is so complete that it is almost clarifying. Because here is what you know that no one else in that conference room knows. One of the 17 arrested is a mid-level distributor named Varela, whose network you have been carefully avoiding for 14 months. Varela's network is not the primary target. Varela's network is, incidentally, adjacent to one of your supply channels. You did not protect Varela, you simply never prioritized him. And in an operation with limited resources, not prioritizing a target and protecting a target produce the same result. This is the distinction you live inside now. It is a very thin distinction. You are aware of exactly how thin it is. After the commendations, you sit in your car in the parking structure and examine this fact about yourself with the same methodical attention you would give to a case anomaly. You do not like what the examination produces. You have not actively obstructed justice. You have not tipped anyone off. You have not taken money. You have simply allowed the geometry of your addiction to quietly shape the geometry of your work in a way that is difficult to see from outside and impossible to ignore from inside. You wonder how long this has been true. You realize you cannot be certain it hasn't been true for longer than you know.
The question of turning yourself in is one you have visited many times. It is not that you don't understand the right answer. You understand the right answer with complete clarity. The problem is the architecture of what turning yourself in would require, a disclosure that ends your career, triggers an internal affairs investigation into every operation you've run in the last 2 years, potentially compromises prosecutions, puts your team under scrutiny for things they didn't do and don't know about. You have, in the process of protecting yourself, also made yourself load-bearing in a structure that would take other things down with you. This is how it works, not through any single dramatic act of corruption, but through the slow, structural entanglement of one compromised component with everything it touches. You open a new investigation. It is not strategic, it is genuine. You have information, developed through legitimate work, about a trafficking network operating through 3 states that no one else in your office has yet connected. You begin building the case with the focused, almost ferocious attention of someone who needs to believe their work still means what it used to mean. You are very good at this. The case develops cleanly. Your methodology is solid. The evidence chain is tight. Ruiz tells you he hasn't seen you this sharp in months, and you accept the observation without comment. You are also, in the 3rd week of this investigation, down to 3 days between doses because the supply channel has developed a complication you would not anticipate it. The complication's name is a mid-level distributor who has been arrested in an operation run by a different DEA field office, and whose arrest has frozen the inventory you were accessing. You spend 4 days managing the symptoms of this with a combination of over-the-counter medications and the particular stillness of someone who has become expert at hiding physiological information. On the 5th day, you find another channel. You do not ask yourself too many questions about this, because the questions lead to an answer you are not ready to act on yet. You tell yourself, after this case, after the case is closed, the arrests are made, the network is documented, and the prosecution is handed off, you will deal with the other thing. You tell yourself this with enough conviction that it functions as a kind of promise, even though you have made this promise before in different forms, and the case always becomes another case. You know this about yourself now. This is perhaps the clearest and most useless knowledge you possess. Your badge is on the desk in front of you. It is the same badge it has always been. The weight of it has not changed. What has changed is you, specifically the increasingly complex relationship between who you are and what the badge represents, and the daily labor of holding those two things together in a way that allows you to keep functioning. Some days the labor is invisible even to you. Some days it is the only thing you are actually doing, and everything else, the cases, the arrests, the commendations, is the cover legend. The new case is real. The work is real, the people you are trying to stop are real, and the harm they cause is real, and your ability to stop them is real. All of this is true simultaneously with everything else that is true, and you have stopped expecting those truths to resolve into something coherent. This is where you live now, in the unresolved space between them, moving forward because stopping is not a choice you have yet figured out how to make, building cases with one hand and quietly dismantling yourself with the other, waiting for a version of the future in which these two trajectories finally, decisively arrive at the same point. The radio on your desk crackles, your team is in position, you put on your jacket, you walk out into the heat. You are still good at this. You are still, for now, intact enough to function. You do not know how much longer either of those things will be true.